Welcome to the Legacy Crusaders YouTube channel where I help you try to misplay less and win more. Here are 5 tips and rulings regarding delayed effects in Yu-Gi-Oh! The precedent ruling on how delayed effects work is from a ruling on Infer Noble Knight, Captain Roland, that says it can be used even with no warriors or equipment spells in deck. A similar ruling also exists on Destiny Hero Decider, which says it can be activated even with no targets in the graveyard. Although the rulings do not directly address the question whether the cards would at least need to exist on your deck list, which would at least imply a target could later be in the deck or graveyard to possibly be able to resolve the effect fully. The precedent technically says how cards that would add cards to hand at a later point, even if you cannot resolve them currently, would work. This is important because, generally, in order to legally activate a card, you must be able to resolve all mandatory parts of its effects at the time you would activate it, unless Konami says otherwise, such as using interrupted Kaiju Slumber while either player controls a Kaiju, or the part of the effect that couldn't apply would apply in a delayed manner based on this precedent. Here are some cards that are similar in the sense that they would add cards to your hand later and should still be legal to use despite not having targets. For example, if you summon your opponent's Bestial Magma Hut with the Dark Charmer, you can activate it even if you do not have any dragons in your deck, or in your graveyard, or even in your deck list. You can use Psy-Frame Lord Lambda to search a Psy-Frame even with none in your deck list if your other Psychic is banished while it was face up. You can use Barricade Board Blocker to discard a card even if your deck list contains no field or continuous spells. This general rule that cards with delayed effects can be activated even though the delayed effect cannot apply will also lead to some scenarios which might not seem legal to activate a card, but you can. Here are some of those. Maxx is legal to activate even if you cannot draw cards due to having resolved Pot of Prosperity or you are under the condition of Droll and Lockbird. This is funny because in Master Duel your opponent might misplay by trying to use it at points like this in the game and use it even though they cannot draw cards. You can activate Book of Eclipse even if your opponent has used Pot of Prosperity and will not be able to draw cards during the end phase because that part of Book of Eclipse is delayed. You can't use Book of Eclipse if no monsters on the field can be flipped face down, as that part of the effect applies when the card would resolve and not later on. Also worth mentioning, you can Ash Book of Eclipse when it's activated but not during the end phase when they draw. This is also true for Maxx. Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, when summoned by the effect of Verte Anaconda using Fusion Destiny, is also relevant. If you use DPE to destroy itself during the same turn, you are allowed to activate its effect when destroyed to special summon a Destiny hero on the next standby phase despite being unable to perform additional special summons this turn. But it's not because it's next turn, it's because its summon is a delayed effect so it ignores the restriction of Verte Anaconda. Numa Ron Calling or Rekindling can summon monsters that would normally be banished during the end phase, but if your opponent chains Artifact Lancia or just resolves it before you activate them, they're still legal to use even though you will not be able to banish the monsters summoned during the end phase, specifically because that part of the effect is delayed. Similarly, you can use Lost Wind, Omni Dragon Brotar, Multi-Roll, or many other cards that would need to be banished when they leave the field regardless of Lancia having resolved because that effect does not occur when the effect would resolve. Should those cards be destroyed under Lancia, they'd be sent to the graveyard instead of being banished. What else would you like to see 5 tips about? Check this video for details about missing the timing.